Thank you, Seongjin. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to all colleagues from Kuwait and from the United Nations agencies, programs, and funds, UNICEF, UNESCO, ILO, and IOM, and other agencies who are participating with us, and colleagues from the Resident Coordinator Office. This is very important event and dialogue, and we know that yesterday we had lengthy discussions from different distinguished colleagues and experts from Kuwait on focusing on the education issues and how we can adapt to the current situation during COVID and beyond. It's very important for us and to highlight to you that human capital and the quality and capacity of the human capital to lead on development is highly dependent on the type and form and quality of education that we provide to our generations worldwide. And for that, it is very important to highlight that before the pandemic, the world was already facing formidable challenges in fulfilling the promise of education as a basic human rights. Despite the fact that the near universal enrollment at early grades in most countries, an extraordinary number of children, more than 250 million, were out of school. This is before COVID. And nearly 800 million adults were illiterate. Kuwait is far improved in relation to the school enrollment and illiteracy, which is negligent, actually. Moreover, even for those in school, learning was far from guaranteed. Some 387 million, or 56% of primary school-age children worldwide, were estimated to lack basic reading skills. One other escalating and serious problem that we need to give more attention and strict attention to it is actually from the financing point of view. The challenge was already daunting before COVID. That early 2020 estimate of the financing gap to reach Sustainable Development Goal 4, only quality of education, in low and lower middle income countries, which Kuwait is supporting through its different arms of development, was a staggering 148 billion annually. It is estimated that the COVID crisis will increase this financing gap by up to 1/3. Closure of schools has actually affected this and has increased our challenges for education and for the way how we are going to be looking at things. Just to give you a highlight that around the number of children affected by school closure globally is so huge, between 16th of February to 15th of July, reaching almost 85%. And this is very serious compared to different countries and their capacities and willingness to education. And for that, it is very important to provide you with just a brief recommendation for your discussion today, which has evolved from the policy brief of the United Nations Sustainable Development Group in 2020 for education during COVID and beyond. One of the things that was very important we need to prevent a learning crisis from becoming a general catastrophe that requires an urgent action from all of us. Education is not, as I mentioned, the fundamental right only, it is an enabling right to direct impact on the realization of all human rights. It is a global common good and a primary driver of progress for all across the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, as our conference is looking at Sustainable Development Goals. When education system collapse, peace, prosperous, and productive societies cannot be sustained. And for that, it is very important that when we are looking at schools, we need to, number one, have the first recommendation is to suppress transmission of the virus and plan thoroughly for school reopening. And for that, our policy advice from the United Nations Sustainable Development Group, which includes all 44 UN agencies, funds, and programs and specialized agencies, that the single most significant step that countries can take to hasten the reopening of school and educational institution is to suppress the transmission of the virus, to control national or local outbreaks. And here the vaccination, and Kuwait has been leading in different countries to promote vaccination among people, resident and Kuwaitis, ensuring that everyone is safe and everyone is vaccinated from this. And this is a very, very important step that Kuwait should be appreciated for. Once this have done to deal with the complex challenge of reopening, it is important to be guided by the parameters of ensuring safety for all, plan for inclusive reopening, listens to the voices of all concerned, and coordinate with key actors, including mostly and importantly, the health community. The second thing, which is very important from our recommendation, is to protect education financing and coordinate for impact. And I believe that within your discussion, you are touching base on that. The pandemic has pushed the world into the deepest global recession in living memory, which will have lasting effects on economies and public finances. National authorities and the international community need to protect education financing through the following avenues: strengthen domestic revenue mobilization, preserve the share of expenditure for education as a top priority, and address inefficiencies in education spending. Strengthening international coordination to address the debt crisis for those countries who are affected by it, and protect official development assistance for education. The third recommendation is to build resilient education systems for equitable and sustainable development. Strengthening the resilience of education systems enables countries to respond to the immediate challenges of safely reopening schools and positions them to better cope with future crises. In this regard, the government could consider the following: focus on equity and inclusion, reinforce capacities for risk management at all levels, ensure strong leadership, coordination, and enhance consultation and communication mechanisms. The last recommendation from this policy brief is actually to reimagine the education and accelerate change in teaching and learning. The massive efforts made in a short time to respond to the shocks to education system remind us that change is possible. We should seize the opportunity to find new ways to address the learning crisis and to bring about a set of solutions previously considered difficult or impossible to implement. The following entry point could be the four of our efforts: focus on address learning losses and preventing dropouts, particularly of marginalized groups, offers skills of employability programs, and this is part of our discussion today, support the teaching profession and teachers' readiness, expand the definition of the right to education to include connectivity, remove barriers to connectivity, strengthen data and monitoring of learning, strengthen the articulation and flexibility across levels and types of education and training. I hope that with such kind of some policy advice and recommendations, and with the form of discussion and the panel that we have convened here for you, we will have an interactive dialogue and success in reaching out some plan of action and ideas where we can move forward in supporting education and continuous learning for all. Thank you so much, and I look forward for a fruitful discussion and dialogue today. Over to you, colleague Seongjin.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tarek, for sharing your insight. And well, as Dr. mentioned slightly about our policy brief, on January this year, various UN agencies, including UNESCO, ILO, UNICEF, IOM, UNDP, and World Bank, collaborated together to produce the one single document policy brief, unlocking human capital potential in Kuwait as global actor in the knowledge economy, where strategic investment in education is identified as one of the most critical development area to accelerate the process of knowledge economy in Kuwait. In fact, in Asia, in my continent, there is inspirational wisdom towards teaching and learning. It says, it takes 10 years for a tree to grow, but it takes 100 years for talents to be nurtured. This means that investment in national education system should be not just continuous and endless, but very urgent. So I think this is the core of what we have gathered together to discuss further. So I'm pleased to introduce our very distinguished panelists, as well as 3 excellent presenters today with us. First of all, we have His Excellency, Mr. Sama Al-Sultan, Assistant Under Secretary of Ministry of Education. We also have with us from Ministry of Education, Ms. Mona Al-Ansari, who is the General Supervisor for Mathematics, and Ms. Sheikha Al-Hijaf, who is the General Supervisor for Science. We also have Ms. Mariam Al-Samari from Office of Deputy Minister for Youth Affairs, and Dr. Fatima Al-Musa, who is the head of CAFO, Kuwait Achiever for Future Opportunity. Finally, we have Ms. Amal Al-Said, who is the head of Kuwait Association of Learning Difference. From the United Nations side, we have Mr. Danilo Padilla, who is the Education Program Specialist in UNESCO Office for Gulf States. We have also Mr. Kishore Kumar Singhi, who is the Senior Skills and Employability Specialist in the International Labor Organization, ILO, Regional Office of Arab States. And by the way, Mr. Danilo and Kishore will be making an integrated presentation to share with us their exceptional viewpoint on teaching and technical and vocational education and training, TVET, strategy as a means of implementation for building human capital in Kuwait. In the second session, Ms. Aperdita Spihal, who is education specialist from UNICEF Regional Office of Middle East and North Africa. And she'll be making her presentation on systematically and institutionally building continuous teacher professional development, how we can improve capacity of pre-service, in-service teacher training in Kuwait. Finally, just before starting the session, I really want to share briefly with all presenter and distinguished panelists the idea of how today's session will be proceed in order to be more interactive and in order to avoid any confusion that might arise. In the first session, as I mentioned, UNESCO and ILO will be making their knowledge sharing presentation for about 30 minutes. And right after presentation, as a moderator, I will be asking a couple of general questions to panelists, all panelists from Kuwait Ministry and National Authority. I'm not going to specify certain panelists, but very much appreciate if panelists can share their knowledge in your respective area of expertise in order to have more interactive discussion among us who all very much care about education and training initiatives. So dear panelists, if you'd like to make your intervention or question to presenter right after presentation, please use raise your hand button. And in response to panelist comments, questions and knowledge experience sharing, our UN presenters will be then invited to respond, of course, and end up with the suggesting a way of potential way of collaborating programmatic intervention with panelist organizations. Okay. Finally, if audience other than panelists presenters, but experts. If you have any question, please send me directly your question using chat box with your name and your organization and specify person who you want to ask. And the same modality goes to second session. So this is how today's session will look like. And before inviting the first presenter, it would be great if Asma, the public information officer who can brief about the translation related modality and setting. Floor is yours, Asma.
Thank you, Seong. Of course, as we all know, there is an interpretation option down there, right next to where you see the raise hand or chat, because I'm sure the audience have only 3 options. So you have the Arabic and the English. We will also share a link to a YouTube channel where you can see the recording of the entire session there if you miss it now. Thank you, Seong. Over to you.
Thank you, Asma. Well, so let's start. I'm very pleased again to invite Mr. Danilo and Kishore for their session. Floor is yours, Danilo.
Thank you very much, Sungjin, and good morning, everyone. So my name again is Danilo Padilla, and I'm an education program specialist from the UNESCO office in Doha, which covers the GCC countries. That's why we're also working with our colleagues in Kuwait. I'm very pleased to be joined here by my colleague from ILO Beirut, Kishore Singh, who is also online now and on screen. Again, thank you very much for the invitation. I think this is really very timely, considering the impact of COVID-19 on the education system and in economies of the world. And Kuwait is not exempted to that. I just would like to recognize, before I begin the presentation, really to recognize some of the colleagues that I already know, including Ms. Muna Al-Ansari of the Ministry of Education, Ferdita, of course, and Dr. Amal. We have met in some other occasions. So as Sungjin and Dr. Tarek has mentioned, the UN agencies gathered together to produce a kind of a proposal response to the impact of COVID-19 for Kuwait, and to also try to build the human capacity of the country. There are, of course, many areas of education that we need to look at. And I can say that, at the moment we're currently conducting a situational analysis of the K-12 education system in Kuwait in coordination with the Ministry of Education and UNICEF. But I'm not going to speak about that today. I'm going to focus on the TVET and skills development, which in our view is one of the areas that Kuwait and partners on the ground should be focusing on. We know that Kuwait also is kind of like, while Kuwait is ranking quite high in the Human Development Index, I think it's about 51st out of 188 countries, it is not so high, in terms of TVET. And in particular, with the very kind of limited participation of girls and women. So with that, ILO and UNESCO decided to kind of like look at the scenario of the situation in Kuwait. And towards the end, we will look at some recommendations also that, Kuwait government, in collaboration with all the agencies present and partners, we should be considering for implementation. But first of all, why did we do that? We wanted to make sure, that the Kuwait's national vision and also the SDG goals are met. We know that many countries in the world, and again, that includes Kuwait, are kind of facing difficult challenges, and we are kind of concerned, that the goals will not be met. So this is why we want to link our intervention on a couple of those. So with that, can you please share the presentation? You should have it there. I mean, that was my introduction, but I'd like you to please share the presentation. Thank you. So while we are working on the presentation, I just want to again clarify that the way we are going to present this would be that we're going to look at the situation in Kuwait linked to the SDG 4 and SDG 8. We will look at the challenges, facing Tibet and also the labor market in Kuwait. And I will hand over the presentation to my colleague Kishore, who will be talking about the policy directions and recommendations. Just to let you know that our presentation actually, we looked at several documents, including the National Vision of Kuwait, all the SDGs and other documents. So, you will find that, and I'm sure that the RCO Kuwait will be able to share with you the presentation if you're interested, because it's quite rich, in content. Plus, also there are several reference documents there that you can look at. So it seems that we're having kind of an issue, because unfortunately from my end, it will be difficult to share the presentation myself. So I'm hoping that someone in the RCO can actually help us. Of course, thank you. Anyway, let me continue talking, because I don't think I will need the PPT, the PowerPoint presentation now. Again, just to remind, this is for the benefit of everyone. I know that you are all familiar with the Kuwaiti context. You know what the Kuwait National Vision is, and also the SDGs. But I just want to, because our intervention, because it's on labor market and Tibet, just want to again remind everyone about the linkages to the SDG. For example, SDG 4, it calls on member states to ensure equal access to affordable and quality Tibet programs, and that's target 4.3. Substantially increase the number of youth and adults with relevant skills for employment, decent jobs and entrepreneurship, that's target 4.4. Eliminate gender disparities in education, 4.5. Ensure all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, and that's 4.7. In terms of SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, it calls on member states to achieve full and productive employment and decent work for all women and men, including for young people and persons with disabilities, and equal pay for work of equal value. So that's 8.5. Finally, the member states also call to substantially reduce the proportion of youth not in employment, education, or training, and that's 8.6. So with regard to the Kuwait vision and human capital development, again, I am sure that the participants and panelists are all familiar with that vision, which contains two pillars relevant to the Tibet sector. Firstly, creative human capital. The government of Kuwait aims to reform the education system to better prepare youth to become competitive and productive members of the workforce. Secondly, sustainable diversified economy. Government aims to develop a prosperous and diversified economy to reduce the country's dependence on oil export revenues. For each part, the Public Authority for Applied Education and Training, and I hope someone is here from PAE today, because I think it will be good to continue the discussion with them. Which is the entity responsible for Tibet and Kuwait. The vision states that its mission to develop human resources by restructuring applied education institutions, excuse me, and their programs, and designing a national system for Kuwaiti qualifications. We still don't have the PowerPoint, but let me continue, at least to inform you about the barrier which Actually, ILO, UNESCO, and other UN colleagues have identified as the barrier between the labor market and the TVET providers, which is really kind of contributing to the kind of like not an ideal situation of TVET in Kuwait. So let me talk first about the labor market challenges. As we know, and this is again not a unique situation in Kuwait, which is the youth bulge, like a lot of youth who are unemployed, and this is not just for Kuwait, but even in the entire Arab region. And actually, some studies suggest that that problem has doubled in the Middle East and North African region since the past 30 years. So this is something that we really need to be looking at. Employment in labor markets. Okay, so thank you very much. So we can go to skip that slide, and we can go to the labor market challenges, please. More, the next one, please. Yes, the next one, Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is what I was talking about, about the labor market challenges. So there are, for example, I mentioned the youth bulge, which is not a unique problem in Kuwait. And also the segmented public and private jobs, women and men, migrants, and nationals. And we know that Kuwait is just like many other countries in the GCC, quite reliant on migrant workers. In terms of education, I think we can all agree that there is really a disconnect between between employment and skills mismatch, with a heavy concentration of national labor force in general education in public sector compared to the industries, perceive them as unproductive in market entrance that prefer public sector. So there is also a mismatch between the demanded skills by employers and the supplied skills by workers, which create a structural unemployment. In terms of business and economy, we see that some of the challenges include the lack of employment focus, inadequate entrepreneurial training and business support services to boost employment, lack of sectoral diversification in production to promote labor-intensive sectors. So next slide, please. The next one, please. Yes. So as you can see here, in 2020, TVET Global Rank, Kuwait is at 98, out of 138 countries. So this is really a concern that we need to be looking at. So in addition to the challenges I have already mentioned, the challenges in Kuwait's TVET sector affect youth significantly. So unemployment among youth, which is from 15 to 24 years old, is a major challenge in the Arab states. Like I said, it's not unique to Kuwait, reaching the highest rate in the world. According to the World Bank data published in 2019, the Arab world is growing fast, and the number of workers aged 15 to 24 will grow to 58 million in 2025. So again, just to recap about some of the challenges facing the TVET sector, one of them is the social image of the sector. This is again not unique to Kuwait. TVET is not usually considered as a very good option, for students. So they prefer to go to universities rather than attending like TVET schools. Closed system with limited access to higher education, dispersed governance, and funding. I think Dr. Tariq mentioned about funding earlier in his intervention. So funding for TVET does not meet development requirements. And perhaps one of the areas too will be lack of partnership with the private sector institutions. So I think when we continue the discussion later today, we'll be able to address some of this. I'm not going to read what's already written on screen and in the slides here, but this is just to summarize basically the challenges and the situation in Kuwait. I am going now to hand over to my colleague Kishore to look at the policy directions and some recommendations. And I'm sorry about the.
Thank you, Danny. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And thanks to Seong for organizing this and inviting us. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So again, thanks to Danny for setting the context and saying the challenges that the Kuwait has to meet SDG goals and targets, and plus it has its own vision 35. How can we help, what are the directions that Kuwait needs to take to reach to SDG goal or to realize the vision which they have set for the country. So we thought that these are the key policy directions where the supply side and demand sides need to talk to each other. There has to be engagement into between the Tibet system or education system at large and the market or the employers. That is one very important thing, because the skills or the education need to standardize itself to what is the demand in the market, and that's where it set the pathways. The other important thing is that quality of education. Yesterday in the evening, the quality education came in a discussion, and very good discussion took place. The Kuwait government side presented a very good picture that what is their plan for improving the quality of the skills and education. It has to be relevant and it has to lead to a result to employment. Otherwise, the quality which doesn't meet the standard of the market will not, give any kind of employment. And then the larger concern, which we all are aware, are the climate change, which is a big threat to the, future generation, to our generation as well as future generation. How do we meet the need of the green market? Or how do we green our jobs itself and the green skills, So this is the, climate smart response to the skills. These are the 4 key policy directions I would briefly be touching upon. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So to do all these, generally we have seen, I'll also be talking about briefly that what has been done in this part of the world, so there has to be a national policy, and system for market relevant training with the private sector engagement in skills delivery. So that's the broad, a kind of recommendations or broad kind of policy directions, which we are seeking. So there has to be a policy. And the governance system, skills governance system, need to be tuned to the market needs as well as improved efficiency, online, introduction of online skilling, But none of these things will happen unless there is a finance available for this, So when we are talking about improved skills delivery, which is a market driven, it means that it requires huge amount of investment in building the laboratory, building the campus, training the teachers, so it requires a different orientation to the budget allocation, national budget allocation, which has been done traditionally in education sector. So it has to also, respond to the changes. In this part of the world, there are 3 countries which have taken initiative, so far as I know. Jordan has done it. Lebanon has done it. They have national Tibet framework, a strategic framework. And then Yemen hasn't adopted, but they have developed the draft, policy or the strategy, national strategies there. So The other important, change which has to come, that private sector engagement has to be structured. It has to be, it has to create a structural link between the education and the employers, or the industries. So the Sector Skills Councils has been one of the, important initiatives in this part of the world. Is in Jordan. 4 or 5 such sector councils have been formed, where the main role of the sector council is to anticipate that what will be skills and the skills standards that will be required, in future, in next 5 years. What is the current need, what will be the future need. So a skills anticipation is important to inform the Tibet institutes that what kind of skills will be required or will be required. The other important thing is that their engagement, private sector engagement, is equally important in competency development. So if we are saying that, what are the competencies which are required for a particular job, need to be determined between the Tibet authorities and the Skills Council. Similarly, their engagement in curriculum development, competency-based assessment, work-based learning, and jobs placement. So entire skills delivery cycle needs to engage the private sector. There has been a good examples of centralized planning and decentralized application of the plan. We also need to encourage the private sector to incorporate strategies that promote investment in skills financing. If we currently look at the private sector investment in skills, is dismal. So if the private sector needs highly skilled people, relevant skilled people, then they also need to invest, So this has been, no skill system in the world has been successful without private sector, investment. So the skills financing, it will be very important, and that should take into consideration the private sector engagement. The skills anticipation system needs to be in place. What we also call it market intelligence system, that what is required in the market, and that need to be structured in labor management information system, So the labor management information system need to be updated, periodically based on the skills which are required in the market. Based on the identified, occupations which are required, the skills required, what should be the competency? So the competency-based training system need to be put in place, and that should be the core of the skills governance. And this need to be in response to the technology which are changing, especially we are talking about Industrial Revolution 4, which is, changing the landscape of the jobs, which is changing the landscape of the future of the work, and that's the reason why the STEAM, the science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, disciplines need to be emphasized more in the education system, as well as softer skills, which has been requirement of the most of the industries, need to be embedded in the curriculum. Digitalization with provision of reskilling, upskilling. No skill is going to be a permanent skills, that will be required. It will change its, nature. It will evolve because technology is evolving, and if you don't upskill or reskill, then the employment, there will be another, path of unemployment, that people will get soon unemployed because is the skills mismatch, So apart from all these points is also important because as we know that, general education is much more popular than the technical education, So there has to be a pre-training counseling also of the students that what are the prospect of the technical education, and also the post-training is, their counseling, and there has to be job portal where the supply side and demand side meet. The employers can choose the candidates who have passed out, and the students can choose after passing out or graduating that which company has what kind of jobs for them. So there has to be some digital platform where the employers and the Tibet graduates, they meet each other, So these are the, policy and systems which we are talking about, which need to be in place for, and many elements of these are present in this region. That's very important, that we have, a neighborhood we can learn many of these things, that how to do that. Next slide. The other, policy direction is that how do we, upgrade the standards and create pathways for the TVET graduates, by improving the standards and pathways. What do we mean? We mean that we ensure relevant education, relevant skills, which is, and reliable standards, which meet the standard of the market, and this can only happen through the private sector engagement, we need to ensure that efficient pathways need to be there for, acquiring skills. Also, there has been trend, and there is a, like in Lebanon, there is also example that how the TVET education and the entrepreneurship education both have been blended, so that you have an option that after getting a skill, you can do for a wage employment, or you go for, your own enterprise. You use that technology to set up your own enterprise, But to do all these, to put the systems in a place, we need a qualification framework, a national qualification framework, which bring together the transferability between the general education, the technical education, and other forms of other pathways of education, how they equate with each other, and how do we set the standards, which is not based on the exam focus, which is not exam focus, that, how you have performed in the exam. It will be more what skills you have learned, So it's a learning outcome which is more important, rather than, the examination, what you know. The knowledge would not be so important in this system as much as the skills, which will be, the knowledge also has the skills also has a knowledge part, so the related knowledge, the relevant knowledge you need to have, and then we also need to align this general education and TVET education, because when we are talking about TVET education, if the STEAM, the science and technology and engineering elements are not there in the secondary education, or the, then how do they, how do you create pathways then? So you are creating pathways from the schools itself, for entering into the technical education. The other very important thing is that when we are talking about no one is left behind, then it is important that we create a pathways, equitable system, access, for everybody, whether they are women, gender, persons with disability, or, refugees, or, we need to make the system more inclusive, because we need more trained people, so more trained people, better the economy. Next slide. The other thing is that how do we improve the quality, relevance, and results? I'll be very short about it, that we need to ensure accessibility and relevant data, recent research, what is in place. The quality assurance frameworks need to be in system. Apart from the national qualification framework, we need to have a quality assurance framework, which will help the teachers and the employers to make an assessment of the TVET graduates, and then we need to have a regular and mandatory professional development opportunities for the teachers and trainers also. If we don't upgrade their skills, in tune with the, changed curriculum, it will not happen. And then ensure on-the-job training, which is the part of the curriculum, we have different names for it. We call apprenticeship, we call dual training system. We have different names for it, but basically learn at your workplace. You will, more. So 60%, 70% time you spend at the workplace learning practical things, Next slide. Yeah, next slide, please. And lastly, we are talking about that I mean, if we are talking about green economy, if we are talking about how to, change the world to, respond to the climate change, the TVET sector or education sector cannot be exist in isolation. It has to meet the demand of the greening economy, and greening business. So we need to have, promote green campuses, green curriculum, green communities, green research and green cultures, because now we are talking about green buildings. If you have a green buildings, you need to have a green, carpenter also, and green, plumber also. So you need to include or integrate the greening elements in your curriculum itself, So yeah, next one. Next slide, please. Yeah, so these are the policy directions which we talked about. Just this is to put all in one basket, that we are talking about private sector engagement in the skills cycle. We are talking about standard and pathways. We are talking about quality and relevant results. And, we are talking about greening the TVETs, and other considerations which are very important is that as we know that there is a perception about technical education, that is not so good as general education. I would like to be a master's rather than going for a technical education. That mindset and that thing has to change, and second, that we need a further research. We need career guidance. Also, the skills need to be responsive to the future of work. What is where we are going through, IR4 or through, because of climate change, these are the drivers, of the changes in the world, migration, climate change, the trade. These are the drivers. How a skill system respond to all that, and it cannot happen unless until we introduce lifelong learning and make our skill system inclusive. Over. Thank you so much for having a patience to listen. Thank you so much. Over. These are the resources which and the references which you can, see that what we are talking about and where to get these, information, what has happened in other part of the world, how to learn about that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for Mr. Danilo and Mr. Kishore for this excellent and exceptional presentation. Now, as briefed at the beginning, I'd like to ask all panelists 3 general questions, of course, together with the comments or thoughts on this presentation and policy direction, if you will. So all right, let me just brief the first of it, just simple question for all, and I will give you floor. The first question is general. What policy support is already in place to support PPPs in TVET sector? And second of all, what are the most pressing TVET challenges from government point of view, especially vis-a-vis COVID? Third question, to what extent industry employers are engaged in country's TVET system for delivering employable skills? Dear panelists, floor is yours, open. Amar?
Thank you so much, Sinag Ala, for organizing this panel of discussion. And I thank Mr. Danielo and Mr. Kishore for their presentation. That was very informative, and you really touched the wound of the challenging we're facing in the education in Kuwait. Of course, in my position as the head of a non-profit organization to support a student with LD and ADHD, and I'm a part of the a member in the National Disability Society. I'd like to say that I relate to everything you said about training and empowering teachers in order to develop education in Kuwait. We cannot do this, of course, without empowering the people working in the field. But from my side as an NGO, I cannot speak about the private sector. I'm sure we can really depend on their support on this training proposals. But I can speak only about our participating as an NGOs. We submitted a training program for the Ministry of Education in order to prepare our schools for inclusion. You know, inclusion is very important, and all the world treaties of including people with disability, and it's even in the Kuwait law number 8 2010 in the chapter 10, it says how important to prepare our schools for inclusion. Of course, that's been specified. Obviously, we are 2021, so it was 10 years ago. And very limited things has been done into this direction. Of course, if we want to be active in this area, to include our student with disability in the mainstream schools, we cannot do it. This is what I've been fighting for and emphasize. I refuse to move anything in this direction without training and preparing teachers. The department, the top of the Ministry of Education, the leaders of the schools, the parents, the student themselves, they need to be prepared of inclusion. Still in our society, many people don't even know what's the meaning of inclusion. They think it's geographical. Just you carry item from one place to another. Sorry, you cannot do this with humans. Specifically, student with disability. You have to be so sensitive for their needs, for their environment, for their future. If you're going to do this, you have to do it with a great awareness of the most important steps. We have to do it step by step. Of course, the proposal we hand to the Ministry of Education, it's still in their, I don't know where, drawers, laptops, shelves, I don't know where it is. But nobody contacted us about that. And we've been sending letters. I don't know. I think many people is hiding behind the curtain of COVID-19. There is many things we can achieve, has nothing to do with being separated socially or wearing masks. We can do a lot. Look what this NGO did with this important conference, invited on the panel discussion yesterday and today, very important people who have a lot to offer the education in Kuwait. So we can do a lot if we really want to do it. We have to have the intention to empower our schools, empower our teachers, to support them with any training we can do. This is what I wanted to say. All we need, and I thank you again when you emphasize on the leadership of the national plan. This is what we've been asking for, national plan to develop education in Kuwait. You know, when the first script of the developmental education development in Kuwait, I noticed there was no chapter for students with disability. Until I raised this issue to the Dr. Sabih Al-Mkhazim, he was the head of the National Office of Educational Developmental, and then start the movement, and we start receiving many experts from the United Nations office in Kuwait and from the Ministry of Education. We received many people to sit with us and talk to us and try to sense and hear the needs of the student with disability of Kuwait. Since the 70s, we've been pioneered, I know that, but unfortunately, or fortunately, we are not living in the 70s. We are living now. We want to know where we are now and what we can do to our student. There is no plan in the Ministry of Education for developing the private education. When I say private education, I mean the education for people with disability. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I thank you for inviting me to be in this panel.
Thank you very much for sharing. This is indeed really meaningful and constructive comments. And there's a raised hand from Danny, and before that, I may ask the other panelists. I believe the Ms. Mona can prepare something for us for discussion. Floor is yours, Mona.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for inviting me. And I'm very glad in these situations we are still smiling. Thank you, Amal, and I hope everything will be fine through this pandemic all over the world. Little bit in our Ministry of Education. First, I have all of us faced challenges. I'd like to give some points about the challenges and achievements. I'm not talking, Ms. Amal, about the students with disabilities, which are exactly in our hearts. Don't think that we ignore them. Believe me, somebody is looking for them. Somebody is planning for them. But if you please, I have little bit points. Just I want to tell you about some challenges and achievements through the Ministry of Education for our students, for our teachers in the Ministry of Education. If you please, I can put little bit this my presentation, if you please, Mr. Ahmed, or I do share screen for me. I hope it is fine. This presentation yesterday, we shared it with our colleagues through the GCC office. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how, can I do it in Arabic? If you don't mind, can I do it in Arabic because it's already in Arabic? And if you have a translator?
Sure, there's a translator, yeah, sure.
Okay. So, let me go back, I'll hide that one. About the challenges, ما أدري فيني أحول على اللغة الإنجليزية. واجهنا تحديات في تلك المنظومة التعليمية، أهمها كان هو انقطاع العمل، خاصة أنها كانت محنة، ولكننا ننظر إلى أنها، وسمعت هذه العبارة، إلى أنها تحولت إلى محنة. عدم معرفة مدى هذه الجائحة أو أمد هذه الجائحة وتاريخ انتهائها وتذبذب شدة تأثيرها، نقص في البنى التحتية لتكنولوجيا المعلومات الموجودة في الدولة، بالنسبة للمناهج عدم موائمتها للتعليم اللي هو عن بعد باللي كان سابقا التعليم المباشر، الصعوبات في تقديم بعض البرامج ذات الطابع العملي مثل المختبرات والتدريب الهندسي والإكلينيكي الميداني. أيضا هناك صعوبة واجهتنا وهي عملية التواصل بين كل من القائمين على وضع السياسات التربوية والمناهج التربوية وعلى وضع منصات التعليم الإلكتروني، ولكن أبشركم أننا تخطينا هذه الحواجز جميعها. القصور في المعلومات المتاحة وما هي المشاكل التي نشأت. إيش صار في هذا؟ التحديات هناك واجهت القائمين على المنظومة وهيئة التدريس. لاحظنا أن معظم المعلمين لا يمتلكون أو يفتقدون مهارة وطرق التعليم الحديثة والبرامج التعليمية مثل استخدام برامج المايكروسوفت تيمز أو الزوم. هناك ظهرت مواطن ضعف في نظام التعليم والتدريب في المجال التقني والمهني، أيضا نقص شديد في أعداد المعلمين أثر كثيرا أيضا، والسبب هو حدوث الجائحة والسفر الكثير، ووضع آلية مناسبة لتقييم مستوى الطالب ومراقبة الامتحانات كانت من التحديات التي واجهتنا بالنسبة للهيئة التدريسية. أما بالنسبة للتشالنج حق اللي واجهت الستودنتس هو صعوبة استخدام المنصات التعليمية عن بعد لأول مرة وكيفية تقديم الاختبارات الإلكترونية. الضغط على شبكة الإنترنت لكثرة المستخدمين أدى إلى صعوبة الربط أحياناً. انقطاع التعليم المهني، ذلك لصعوبة تدريب الطلبة وخاصة اللي تكلمت عليهم أستاذتي الفاضلة أستاذة أمال اللي هم disability students. انخفاض نسبة التحصيل العلمي لدى الطلبة خصوصاً في المواد العملية، وانخفاض أعداد طلبة المنح الدراسية وصعوبة التواصل معهم. كل هذه تحديات واجهتنا. كذلك من التحديات المهمة هي تحديات التي واجهت الأسرة والمجتمع. نقص الوعي المجتمعي في كيفية الانتقال من التعليم المباشر إلى التعليم التقني أو الإلكتروني أو الرقمي وطريقة التعامل مع هذه الوسائل. زيادة الأعباء المادية والمعنوية على أولياء الأمور بسبب تفاوت الإمكانات المادية. تضاعف أيضا مسؤولية الأسرة كجهة الإشراف المباشر على الطالب أثناء تلقيه الدروس عبر قنوات التعلم عن بعد. محدودية الوقت بالنسبة للأم العاملة وخاصة لمن لديهم أكثر من طفل، وهذه كانت من المشاكل الكبيرة لدينا ونلتمسها ونحس ونشعر بها. قلة توفر الأجهزة الإلكترونية اللي تحوي النظام التعليمي، ولكن أرجع وأكرر أننا استطعنا التغلب على معظم هذه. في إجراءات حصلت اللي هي الأتشيفمنتس اللي احنا نعتبرها أتشيفمنتس على مستوى الدولة بناء على قرار مجلس الوزراء في دولة الكويت. تم تعطيل طبعا المدارس أغلبها والكليات، وكان هناك تنسيق بين مختلف قطاعات وهيئات الدولة. تم هناك أخذ جميع التدابير الاحترازية وحجر المصابين القادمين من الكويت. أيضا هناك كانت توعية مجتمعية بنشر البرامج التوعوية للوقاية من فيروس كورونا كوفيد-19 ونشر ثقافة التباعد ولبس الكمام والقفاز. حصل هناك أنه تطوع الكثير من الشباب الكويتي في مختلف المجالات وتقديم المساعدات للعاملين بالصفوف الأولى. هذه اللي هو بعض المؤشرات اللي حدثت عند حدوث الجائحة في البدايات والإجراءات الحكومية التي قامت بها الوزارات جميعها بما فيهم وزارة التربية، حيث أننا نعلم أن وزارة التربية من أهم البنى التي نسعى إلى أن نخلق من أبنائنا جيل مزدهر أو للمستقبل يستطيع أن يخطط لكل شيء نريده. هناك أيضا إجراءات قامت بها خاصة في وزارة التربية، فحيث أنها وضعت خطط مفصلة لعودة العمل بكافة الوحدات التعليمية التابعة للوزارة، وتم عمل دليل إرشادي يحوي آلية العمل جميعها، وتم اللي هو نشرها وتقديمها إلى جميع أولياء الأمور والمتعلمين والمعلمين بالذات. الاستعانة بخبرات أكاديمية من جامعة الكويت لتقييم الوضع الراهن. كذلك أصدرت الوزارة قراراً بإعادة تنظيم الرسوم الدراسية للمدارس الأهلية بتخفيض نسبة 25% من الرسوم الدراسية المقررة في حتى عودة الطلبة إلى المدارس. تم إصدار أيضاً قرار بعودة طلبة الصف الثاني عشر فقط في شهر أغسطس، وكانت هذه هي بداية العودة إلى التعليم. لم ينقطع التعليم إلا شهرين فقط، فكانت هناك خطة كبيرة وضعتها الوزارة لكي تقوم بدءا بالصف الثاني، حيث أنه مرحلة انتقالية إلى مستقبل جديد. فبالتالي بدأت هي التعليم أو التواصل مع التعليم في هذه المرحلة. كذلك بدأ العام الدراسي لجميع مدارس دولة الكويت في 4 أكتوبر من خلال التعليم الإلكتروني، حيث تم دمج المناهج المتبقية من الفصل الثاني مع الفصل الدراسي الأول، ولم يتم قطع التعليم ولم يتم استثناء المواد العلمية، إنما كان هناك موائمة لهذه المناهج التي كانت تبث مباشرة أو تعطى مباشرة، وعملت لها موائمة بمفاهيم علمية، وتم استقطاع الكثير من المفاهيم غير الضرورية التي يستطيع المتعلم أن يأخذها بنفسه من خلال التعلم عن بعد. كذلك تم إلغاء الاختبارات الورقية حفظاً على سلامة أبنائنا، واعتماد آلية تقييم إلكترونية بناء على نقاط تفاعل وحضور وأداء واجبات وغيرها، واعتماد خطة تعليم غير متزامنة لطلبة رياض الأطفال ولم يتم نسيانهم، وتم وضع خطة للفئات من الديسابيليتيز وهم اللي هم بطيء التعلم وصعوبات التعلم، وتم الاستمرار معهم بنفس الخطة والآلية، وإن كانت هي النتائج لها أقل من النتائج التي تلقيناها للمتعلم العادي. أيضاً هناك فريق تطوعي لإعداد وتقديم تسجيل حلقات تعليمية تم توفيرها في وزارة التربية للمناهج، بحيث أنه من لم يستطع الحضور في الفصل الدراسي يجد الحلقة أو الدرس مشروحاً مكرراً. وتم التنسيق أيضاً مع وزارة الإعلام لتخصيص قناة تلفزيونية، وتم تجهيز أنشئة منصات تعليمية وخاصة اللي هي البوابة الإلكترونية. وبشركم من أهم شيء أنه هو الآن تم رفع القوة للشبكة الألياف الضوئية بحيث أنها تستقطب جميع مدارس ومتعلمين دولة الكويت التي تفوق 800,000 مستخدم لها، وتم تجهيز المدارس للتعليم عن بعد وإعادة ذهاب المعلمين، ولكن في الظروف الآونة الأخيرة اللي هو تم توقيف أو تحديد نسبة الحضور داخل هذه المدارس، إعداد دورات تدريبية لتمكين المعلم والمتعلم والموجه الفني قبل بداية التعليم في خلال 2 أسبوع. هذا أثبت أن التعليم لدينا الإلكتروني ليس جديداً على دولة الكويت. للعلم هذه النقطة لازم تثار. إذا كنا نلجأ أو نتجه مستقبلاً إلى إدخال التعليم المدمج فإننا نستخدمه منذ الأمد. لماذا؟ لأن أساساً إحنا مزودة مدارسنا بالشاشات التفاعلية التي تخدم التعليم الإلكتروني. أغلب المواد، وللعلم أنا موجه عام للعلوم ساينس، جميع مواد العلوم تستخدم التعليم الإلكتروني، وكذلك المواد الأخرى والرياضيات وغيرها نستخدم التعليم الإلكتروني منذ الأمد باستخدام تلك الشاشات. أحياناً إذا عجز عندنا عمل التجربة العملية نقوم بالتصوير وعرضها عبر الشاشة الإلكترونية الموجودة داخل الصف، لذلك لن يكون صعباً على دولة الكويت أن تطبق التعليم المدمج. كذلك إعداد وبث برامج توعوية لكيفية استخدام برنامج تيمز، دليل الاستخدام، وهناك الكثير مما لديكم. وإذا كنتم والتواصل مع أولياء الأمور وتعليمهم وتشجيعهم، والأدهى من ذلك أن استطاع ولي الأمر أن يتعلم الرقمنة ويتعلم إلكترونيا كيف يتواصل مع بقية الوزارات من خلال تعلمه عبر هذا البرنامج للوقوف مع ولده. يعني إحنا عمينا وليس فقط على المعلم والمتعلم، إنما جعلنا التعليم الإلكتروني يشمل أولياء الأمور ليقومون بخدمات أنفسهم مع الوزارات الأخرى. أيضاً هناك إجراءات وزارة التعليم العالي، وكلنا عارفين هي وضع خطة أكاديمية للهيئات جامعة وجامعة الكويت، تدريب أعضاء هيئة التدريس وتطبيقها، استئناف الدراسة من خلال التعليم، تجهيز القاعات الدراسية لعمل البرامج. كذلك هناك دعم قد نحتاجه ومستمرون من خلال شاكرة للبرامج التي نتلقاها عبر اليونيسكو أو عبر الدول الصديقة عندما ندخل معهم في دورات تدريبية أنه حدثت هناك ومستمرون بهذه الحاجة في تبادل الخبرات والتجارب الناجحة لتطوير ذلك التعليم الإلكتروني، سواء التعليم عن بعد أو التعليم لزيادة كفاءة وجودة التطبيق، كذلك توفير تدريب مهني عالي الجودة للمعلمين والمتعلمين لضمان جودة التعليم. نحن مستمرون ولكن نطمح بالمزيد بأرقى وحتى الوصول إلى أعلى درجات الرقمنة في ذلك، استقطاب أيضا أفضل الممارسات والاستراتيجيات لتقليم المتعلمين. نعم we are doing all this best إن شاء الله to finish that challenges. I hope so. So I hope I did. Thanks. If you need me to continue with you also some recommendations, it's up to, I don't know, where is it? Where did I go? Okay. So.
Okay, thank you.
If I can, or finish for me that time, I can give some recommendations, or I can leave it later, no problem.
Well, let us, yeah, I mean, thank you. First of all, thank you very much. I also understood what you're saying by using technology, the online technology with the interpretation, the English button. So I very much appreciate it. And I would like to give floor first to Danny. As he raised her hand before that, and I will give you flow for recommendation if you wish, of course.
Well, thank you, Songjin, and Ms. Muna, again, thank you very much. And also I really agree also with Dr. Amal, about inclusion and education. I really would not like to take up much of your time, but I just wanted to, again, emphasize the need for us to be discussing, for example, the TVET issues, specifically with the Public Authority for Applied Education and Training. And I hope they are present and have heard the presentation, because we would like to pursue the discussion with them, because they're the one entity that is really dealing with TVET. And of course, the other partners as well. So I just want to flag that, Songjin, before we move on, because there were some questions that you raised that I think, and I totally agree with Dr. Amal, they cannot respond to those questions. So we need someone from the ministry. And thank you and congratulations to Ms. Muna for the presentation. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I think it is effective time if I'm asking Muna to share your thought on the recommendation. And
well, I'm gonna read it to you again. I want to say it in English, but I have it unfortunately in Arabic. So first recommendation, is it my photo and my voice is clear to you? Okay. I'm gonna back to Arabic, unfortunately. So sorry about that. التوصيات اللي راح أو نتمنى أن تكون هناك، أولاً يجب علينا التنوع في تنفيذ التعلم عن بعد بصورة تراعي المختلف أو أنواع الأسر داخل المجتمع الكويتي والتنوع لدى المتعلمين. بعدين وضع خطط على مستوى الدول والوزارات والمنظمات، بحيث أن نتمنى أن تكون متساوية مع بقية الدول، ونأخذ من تجاربهم أن تقدم لنا تلك الخطط لنستطيع نحن حتى الاستفادة بصورة أفضل من اللي إحنا وصلت لنا. أيضاً نريد ونطمح بتأهيل الكادر البشري من الهيئات الإدارية والتعليمية والمتعلمين وإطلاعهم على كل ما يلزم من التقنيات الأساسية، أرقى أنواع التقنيات نريد ونطمح بذلك. نحن نعلم أن هناك لديهم برامج خلال مايكروسوفت تيمز، أن هناك تطبيقات كثيرة، ولكن نطمح بالأعلى، بحيث أن نسعى إلى أن لو كان هناك أي ظرف مثل الجائحة نريد أن يكون هناك طريقة لتطبيق الاختبار الإلكتروني بجدية، وليس بطريقة أن نحن لا نستطيع الوثوق في ذلك. أيضاً الدمج بين الوسائل التعليمية، سواء كانت هناك التلفزيون يعني أو الهاتف، تعليم متزامن غير متزامن. نبي نحدث تفاعل أكبر، تحسين دافعية تعلم وجودة تعلم أكبر، ونسعى بأن تصلنا بعض الخطط. أيضاً تعزيز الموارد الرقمية للمجالات العملية في التعليم المهني والتقني من خلال زيادة الاستثمار في تصميم برامج المحاكاة التعليمية والذكاء الاصطناعي. نريد الخبرة في ذلك، المزيد من ذلك، تقنيات الواقع الافتراضي الفيرتشوال رياليتي والواقع المعزز. نقول لكم ونبشركم لدينا الشاشات التي والبرامج، وما قصرت وزارة التربية في تطبيق الأوغمنتد رياليتيز، ولكن نطمح بالمزيد أيضا وبإعطاء الآراء أكثر. أيضا نريد بأن تكون السياسات التعليمية والتشريعات موحدة ومعطاة بطريقة أن تتوائم ليس فقط لدولة الكويت، إنما نفضل أن تكون على مستوى دول أوسع. أيضاً نحن نعرف ما قصرت اليونيسكو معانا في أنها تمدنا بالكثير من، يعني تطلب منا الكثير لكي تقوم في الأخير وتعلق وتحكم، لكن ما زلنا نريد الاستعانة بخبراء واختصاصيين في هذا المجال. ونحن لا يعني تنقصنا في دولة الكويت، لكن نحن عندما نقول هذا الكلام نريد من طبق ووصل إلى مرحلة عالية أو كان يطبق من السنوات السابقة. أيضاً نحن نسعى بأي طريقة أخرى بأن يكون هناك دعم للمعلمين وتشجيعهم على وتدريبهم على صناعة المنهج والمحتوى التعليمي والأنشطة والتقييمات المناسبة ووضع الخطط التربوية ذات الصلة بالتعليم عن بعد. أيضاً هناك نريد أن تكون البرامج الدراسية عن بعد برامج دامجة ومكيفة تأخذ بعين الاعتبار اللي هم disabilities students أو الاحتياجات الخاصة في التربية الدامجة. عملية الدمج هذا والتي نطمح بها كثيراً. التوجه لأولياء الأمور باعتبارهم، وهذه من التوصيات، ونحن نحاول أن نطبق هذه التوصيات ولكن نطمح بخطط أخرى. أولياء الأمور باعتبارهم جزء مكمل لفريق التعليم عن بعد، واعتماد الحوار والتوعية كوسيلة من أجل لعب الدور الأساسي المحوري في دعم الأبناء ومساندتهم معنوياً وفنياً في تنظيم ومتابعة الجداول الدراسية، وبالتالي متابعة التحصيل التعليمي للمتعلمين. وكذلك المهم جدا تفعيل الشراكة بين القطاعين العام والخاص وتوفير خدمات. وإحنا الحمد لله استطعنا القضاء على موضوع خدمات الإنترنت، ولكن هذه دائما تضع في التوصيات بأن حتى نستطيع أن نقول أن. تفضلي أستاذة أمان.
Thank you very much.
عندي سؤال لك أختي منى. أولا شكرا على البرزنتيشن الرائعة اللي قدمتيها، رفعتي معنوياتنا وإحنا سعيدين أن هذا المستوى يعني من الخدمات التعليمية اللي تقدمها وزارة التربية في وجود أشخاص مثلك وشرواج. I thank Ms. Muna for her presentation, which shows the effort put from the Ministry of Education in handling the COVID-19 crisis and empowering the distant education. But I have two questions, and please bear with me. One question: do you think it's whatever the Ministry of Education did, and all the money that Kuwait is spending on smart boards, laptops, whatever gadgets we need, would this make the distant education effective when we ask or force the teachers to close the camera and stop the interaction between them and the student? This is my first question. My second question: you welcomed the collaboration between the ministry and the private sector. But I was hoping that you would mention us, the NGOs. I wish that you mention us and welcome us in the collaboration, because, you know, the pillars of the sustainable developmental from the United Nations says there is no developmental without the NGOs. So you can't do anything without us.
Of course.
With all the respect to you, we are so close to the people. We are so close to the parents and students, and we know their needs, especially when it comes to people with disability. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for listening to my questions.
Of course, thank you, Amal. For the first question, أول نرجع حق السؤال الأول. ما سجلته للأسف. كان بس تذكريني فيه شوية إذا معلش.
نعم. نعم، سؤالي كان هل كل هالاستعدادات الرائعة اللي قدمتيها لنا تكفي إذا طلبنا من المعلم يسكر الكاميرا؟
طبعا إحنا معاك وضده، إحنا معاكم وضد تسكير الكاميرا. المشكلة إن نحن في مجتمع للأسف الشديد، هذا المجتمع مستوى الثقافات مختلفة جدا أستاذتي آمال. لما جينا نفرض وضع أو فتح الكاميرا واجهنا المشاكل في البداية. لا تنسين إن اللي هو قد لا يكون جديد على بعض العوائل أو الأسر الموجودة في دولة، لكنه جديد جدا على الكثير، والتي يمثل النسبة الشريحة الأكبر في دولة الكويت. بالنسبة للكاميرا أنا معك قلبا وقالبا، لو حصل أن هناك فتحت الكاميرا لمن يرغب راح يكون في هناك تقدم وتطور وحصر نسبة تعليم بزيادة عن المستوى اللي إحنا مثلا قسناه، ولو إنه هو يعتبر بالحد الأدنى من التعليم عن بعد، ولكن راح يكون في ارتفاع. المشكلة هي أن إحنا مجتمع يسوقه الرأي الأغلبية ورأي المجتمعي، لكننا أوعدك وأنت قدام الجميع أن ستطرح هذه النقطة في أقرب اجتماع عن موضوع فتح الكاميرا، وإحنا باعتماد أن راح يكون في reopening to the schools، فبالتالي راح تقضى على هذه المشكلة. الآن نحن في الفصل الدراسي الثاني، ونأمل والتي نسعى بأن نقوم بتطعيم جميع اللي هي الهيئات التعليمية والطلبة حتى نباشر العودة. وإن باشرنا العودة يعني تقريبا متخطين كل ما تأخذه وزارة، ثقي تماما أستاذة أمال أن كل ما تقرره وزارة التربية هو وفق رهان وزارة الصحة. تم تشكيل لجنة عليا بين وزارة الصحة ووزارة التربية، حيث أن وزارة التربية وضعت خطة العودة إلى الدراسة من شهر أبريل، لكنه لم يكن هناك موافقة بسبب انت شايفة الظروف الراهنة. فتح الكاميرا مهم جدا، وأنا أوافقك الرأي في ذلك، لكن أنا قلت لك الأسباب وهي الضغط المجتمعي للأسف من أولياء الأمور كثير. إحنا نحاول قدر الإمكان أن نجعلها اختيارية، على الأقل تكون فيها المجال أفضل. السؤال الثاني بالنسبة اللي هو التوافق بين أو الاتفاق بين القطاع العام والقطاع الخاص، هل هناك توافق؟ للأمانة أكون صادقة معاك، إحنا لما وضعنا الخطط أنا أتكلم لأني أتبع قطاع التعليم العام، لكنني أسمع من خبرات الزملاء في القطاع الخاص أن هناك مشاكل داخل القطاع، بحيث هذه المشاكل تخصهم هم. لا أستطيع أنا أني أتكلم وأقول يجب، أنا أقول أتمنى أن يكون هناك دمج، ولكن اللي أعرف أنهم يعملون محاولين على أنهم يقضون على هذه المشاكل في القطاع الخاص، خاصة للديسابيليتيز. وليس لي أتكلم عن اللي هو التعليم المدارس الإنجليزية لأن أمورها ماشية، وهذا أتكلم عن الديسابيليتيز. إحنا وقفنا أنت عارفة أن عندنا الثلاث فئات اللي هو صعوبات التعلم وبطيء التعلم والداون سيندروم. المستمرين الفئتين معانا في المتابعة بنفس الآلية اللي نعملها، وأنا قلت لك من خلال الكلام إن إحنا زعلانين لأن ما راح ياخذون نفس التطبيق أو نفس مستوى التعليم اللي ياخذه زملائهم. لكن لو كان يعني قد يكون في هناك، وضعنا حلول أن تكون هناك ساعات مكتبية خاصة بين الولي الأمر والمعلم لكل طفل. تم وضعها ضمن الخطة بحيث أنه يتابع المعلم، وتم وضع آلية تقييم لمتابعة هذيل الفئتين. فئة الداون سندروم تم توقيفهم لأن فئة الداون يحتاجون إلى الحضور، ووزارة الصحة منعت حضور هذه الفئة من الطلبة. قرار لدى وزارة الصحة وليس لدى وزارة التربية. وضعنا خطة لهم ولكن لم توافقنا على ذلك. أما بالنسبة لبقية اللي هم مثل مدارس الأمل ومدارس النور، نحن نعرف أن قدراتهم تفوق اللي هي يعني حتى لو لابد أن يكون هناك تعليم مباشر، لكن إحنا صحة أبنائنا تفوق. هو أن نقول التعليم عال ونريد أن يكون بالمستوى العلو الذي نطمح له، ولكن الصحة تفوق وجود هذا العلو. فبعد تسمحك في أن يعني ما نقدر أن نعطي أكثر من هذا الموضوع. مستقبلاً عندي أمل كبير وقريباً جداً، على فكرة قريباً جداً العودة إلى المدارس. أن لم تكن هذا العام القادم في سبتمبر، مع بعد أخذ اللقاحات واطمئناننا عليهم سيكون هناك التعليم المدمج، وهذه باشرة الشيء الجميل اللي نرغب فيه ونطمح فيه حق مستقبلنا. إحنا تغيرنا، تغيرت الحياة، إحنا أساساً تم بناء نظام تعليمي جديد. هذا النظام يتطلب جهد كبير. يمكن وزارة التربية من النوع اللي ما تتكلم وما تصرح في أمور كثيرة. تعب كان فوق الجهود اللي ما تتخيلينها. أنت أمام العدد مليون، فأنت تبين تطمحين بأن ترتفعين بهالمليون، أن لا يتوقف التعليم لدى هذا المليون اللي أنا أقارب لك فيه بالمليون. نريد أن لا يتوقف. فنحن لو نظرنا إلى هذا في خلال هذه الجائحة، كانت هناك وضع خطة أخذت منا على كاهلنا والله العظيم ليل ونهار ما كانوا ينامون. لكن يمكن مو الكل يعتقدون أن فقط مجرد التدريب عشان أنا أدرب 76,000 معلم، زين، خلينا أقول 3000 موجه فني و800,000 متعلم على استخدام الفصول الافتراضية. خلي الكمبيوتر يعرفون استخدام طريقة التعلم عبر المايكروسوفت تيمز. هل تتوقعين هذا بالسهولة؟ استطاعت وزارة التربية في خلال أقل من شهر أن تعمل هذا الشيء، وهذا جهد جبار. فإحنا خلينا نشوف الجانب الإيجابي ونطمح بالتعاون. وأنا يعني إن شاء الله راح أنقل ما تتمنينه إلى أستاذ الدكتور عبد المحسن الحويلة وإلى أستاذ أسامة السلطان. هذا كل ما يعني بالنسبة لي الأمنية والتعاون اللي بين الاثنين. شكرا.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your very constructive and insightful sharing knowledge and experience with us. And as we already passed this planned time set, but actually, as you know, this online training and blended learning initiatives, together with the DVET initiative, together with our the teacher, the professional teacher training program, which our colleague will be leading in next session, they are all interconnected. So why don't we just extend, allow us ourselves to have more, like a 5 minutes, 10 minutes before moving to the second session. First of all, I would like to give the floor to Sheikha Al-Jaf first, and then I will read some of questions from chat box that are broadly related to Danny's intervention, and finally when Danny and respond, and I would like to ask him to suggest some of possible and potential way forward. Floor is yours, Sheikha Al-Jaf.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting us for this workshop. Thank you, Danielo and Kishore for your presentation, and my friends Muna for her presentation. Welcome Dr. Amal with us in this workshop. أحب أتكلم بالعربي وأحب إني أرد على سؤالين فقط. راح أرد على سؤال الأخ دانييلو: ما هي الهيئة المسؤولة عن التعليم الحرفي في الكويت؟ أحب إني أقول له أن هناك الهيئة العامة للتعليم التطبيقي والتدريب، والتي تأخذ الطلبة من نظام التعليم العام من جريد 12 يدخلون عندنا على الهيئة. في هناك أيضا برنامج لمن يتخرج من جريد 10 من العاشر، وهو التعليم الحرفي في قطاعات متنوعة جدا، فيها الصناعة والحرفية والكهرباء، وتغذي جميع قطاعات الدولة. تخرج هذه الهيئة عدد كبير من الطلبة يفوق الآلاف، تغذي فيها القطاع الحكومي والقطاع النفطي وقطاع البنوك والقطاع الخاص بجميع هيئاته وبجميع الأعمال الموجودة، وكذلك تسمح لهم بعمل الأون بزنس، سواء من النجارة ولا من الكهرباء، ورش الكهرباء أو ورش الميكانيكا، فموجود ولله الحمد وعلى قدر كبير. وكان في بداياته الشعب شوية لا يتحفظ على التعليم المهني، يبي أبناء كلهم خريجين جامعة ودراسات عليا، ومثل ما احنا نتمنى كل أبنائنا بهذا الشكل. لكن أيضا الشعب والمجتمع يعني ارتفعت عنده الثقافة بأن هناك لديهم مهارات لو صقلت بالاتجاه الصحيح فسنحصل على نتائج مجتمعية وإنتاجية أعلى، ولله الحمد والمنة. توجه كثير من الشباب ومن يجد لديه الرغبة بعد ذلك في تكميل دراسة البكالوريوس في الجامعات تمنح له الدولة الفرصة بإعطائه البعث لإكمال دراسته. هذا بالنسبة للسؤال الأول. السؤال الثاني أحب أجاوب على أستاذتي ودكتورتي الأستاذة آمال في موضوع فتح الكاميرا. مثل ما ذكرت الأستاذة منى، فتح الكاميرا هو جوهر التعليم عن بعد، لكن مثل ما احنا عارفين احنا انتقلنا بليلة وضحاها 100% من التعليم التقليدي إلى التعليم الإلكتروني وفق ما تتطلبته الأمور الصحية وجائحة الكوفيد 19. نحتاج إلى تشريع التعليم عن بعد. في الكويت احنا ما عندنا تشريع للتعليم عن بعد، عندنا خطة ومعتمدة لكنها لا ترقى إلى أنها تكون تشريع. جامعة الكويت سبقتنا بهذا الشيء. الهيئة العامة للتعليم التطبيقي أيضا أصدرت تشريعاتها واعتمدت من المجلس الأعلى للتعليم. وزارة التربية إلى الآن لم نصل إلى التشريع المطلوب، ونوعد دكتورتنا وكلنا يعني نستشعر أهمية فتح الكاميرا حتى على الأقل نرفع شوية من جدية الأمر ومستوى التحصيل. وأشكر لكم وأتمنى أن أكون جاوبت على الأسئلة. Thank you.
Can I just respond to Miss Miss شيخة؟ شكرا أختي شيخة على المداخلة، وبصراحة أنتم قاعدين يعني اليوم تغذونا معلومات قيمة إحنا في أمس الحاجة أن نعرفها. بس أنا عندي سؤال بسيط. When it comes to the opening the camera and you and Miss Muna discuss the type of society we live in. We are educated society from the 60s. We supposed to be pioneered in everything. So opening the camera for educating our student, I'm sorry, but I cannot accept this as an excuse, because the private schools is they did a great job with educating our kids, my grandchildren in the private schools. So I know what I'm talking about. The camera never closed since day one until today. Aren't we of the same society? We have thousands of Kuwaiti students on the private sector. So excuse me if I cannot take this as an excuse. And this is regarding to the interaction with the student. And I was hoping that the Ministry of Education is supposed to be the leader in this. We cannot follow every desire of every parent. Whoever, Miss Muna, she suggested very good suggestion when she said it's supposed to be optional. Yeah, every parent should choose. And he must understand that it will affect his son or his daughter education. He cannot expect much of the teacher if he chooses to close the camera. That's what we want our education in Kuwait to reach, and I think we earned it. We are educated society. We have universities from the 60s, so I'm sure we can do better than that. Thank you for your contribution and for answering my question.
Thank you, Amar. Thank you, Amar. Yeah, that issue will be also can be discussed in the second session, where after listening and learning from the presentation that prepared by UNICEF colleagues. And dear the Danilo and Kishore, may I give you floor as a final sum up with some suggestion, if you wish.
I think I will go ahead first. Unfortunately, Sung Jin, I think we really ran out of time for discussion. I just want to again to offer our assistance to the government, of course, and we would like to continue the discussion with Dr. Sheikha. I think there are so many things there that we need to pick up on, but I don't think this is really now the proper venue. We're quite late, but I really would like, I'm so happy that you're there today, and perhaps we can discuss this with our colleague from ILO. So again, not to take so much of your time, I just want to give the floor to my colleague Kishore, if you want to add to that. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Kishore? Okay.
But like I said, Sung Jin, I also sent the in the chat box. Would like to connect with Dr. Sheikha and of course other partners who may be interested. Thank you very, very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Danilo and Kishore and all panelists for shaping this very constructive discussion. We now move to the second session, which will be headed by Mr. Perdita from UNICEF. The floor is yours, please.
Hello, I'm very glad to be here today with you, and it's an excellent opportunity actually to hear from partners and especially from key institution representatives here about what is the situation in Kuwait, what are the needs, and some ideas for way forward. So let me try to share my presentation. My presentation is very much focused on teaching workforce development, and while the presentation is quite broad, maybe not very specific and directly talking to Kuwait, but it's very much about some general aspects that I would like us to think about when it comes to the discussion part, in terms of how relevant you think the policy options that are suggested with my presentation are for your context, and of course discussion about many aspects of it. So let me try to share my screen. I hope it works. Does it? Okay, so the slideshow, it's on. Is it okay? You can see it now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. So as I said, my focus will be very much on teacher workforce development, and of course within the framework of SDG 4 to enhance quality education for improved human capital, as this is, I think, the main theme of the consultation. So I don't want to take time to go through the Sustainable Development Goal 4, but just maybe to highlight the keywords which I think have been mentioned by some of the panelists so far. First, like we all have committed to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. And for that to happen, we are very much aware and also committed to ensure that all children have equal access to complete all levels of education, to improve their learning outcomes, to ensure opportunities for early childhood education, reduce gender disparities. As Danilo mentioned, also affordable and quality technical, vocational, and tertiary education to be provided, relevant skills, literacy, numeracy, and so on. But unfortunately, as I am representing UNICEF and I'm representing an organization which has a strong global presence, but regional as well in this region, we are very much kind of worried about the disparities that still persist in most of the countries when it comes to equity, equality, and especially those who benefit the least from the education systems. And something that the representative or the regional, the residence coordinator mentioned in his opening remarks, something which is called learning crisis has to be at the core of our work. Why are we saying that? Is because learning crisis is something that is affecting all countries, is affecting all countries and affecting all layers of society. I took one specific indicator just for us to consider, and maybe you in Kuwait may also think about where Kuwait is there in this regard. So I have taken one indicator which is about percentage of children who cannot read and understand a simple text by age 10. So this is a fundamental learning skill that every child by age of 10 should acquire. So where are we? Globally, we are doing bad, and regions are doing differently. Starting from Europe, which is not bad, and Central Asia with 13%, to Sub-Saharan Africa with 87%. But please just have a look at where our region stands, where Middle East and North Africa is, only at 63%. So we're talking about children who are lagging basic, fundamental, foundational skills. So it actually is one of the key indicators to talk about the learning crisis that we have even before COVID. But what happened with COVID is that disruption of education has affected over 1.5 billion learners. And up to date, until today, actually, we still don't see that children are coming back to school. So we're talking about over 300 million children who are not back in school, including, I think, children in Kuwait, if I'm not mistaken. But at the same time, as we are discussing today, while we are facing the problems with school closures, with providing different alternatives, these are also opportunities for us to reimagine education. What does it mean? We should better harness technologies and innovations to reach all children. We should really ensure that all children and young people acquire needed skills to succeed. Foundational, transferable, digital, entrepreneurial, and job-specific skills, as my colleagues from ILO and UNESCO already mentioned. And the last but not least is to ensure the support that needs to be provided for teachers' workforce development, which is one of the preconditions for education quality. Now, I focus my presentation more on teacher workforce development, and I really want to highlight some key issues which are relevant both for COVID and non-COVID situation. And I really want you to tell me after this whether this is applicable and relevant to your country. So we are mainly facing insufficient number of qualified teachers and educators globally and at the country level. We are facing inappropriate expectations for teacher qualifications. There is inequitable deployment of teaching personnel. There is limited workforce development expertise, ineffective programs, very often lack of effective supervision, monitoring, oversight, and what is also something to bring to attention, we are seeing significant gender inequality when it comes to teaching workforce. So these are the general challenges that we consider that countries in general, on average, face when it comes to teacher workforce. UNICEF has worked recently with two key experts from universities in Europe, from Belgium and from Holland. And they have actually, together with UNICEF, developed a technical guide in terms of the teacher workforce development for preschool education. And the reason why I have picked up this specifically model or this specific framework is really to explore how much you consider that these are applicable and relevant also to your context, but also to different levels of education. So the purpose of my presentation is not to tell you what it is, because I assume that you already know, but actually to intrigue the discussion about whether you think these are pillars that exist in Kuwait, and what is something that you consider relevant to ensure that the education reform in Kuwait will take into consideration when it comes to teacher workforce development. As I mentioned again, this is an example of how it was designed and constructed around the development of early childhood education workforce. So according to this guide, what UNICEF actually is thinking and organizing the thinking about workforce development is around three major pillars. One is on qualifications. The second one is on pre-service training. And the third one is on continuing professional development. So about qualifications, I think that we all agree that this is the basic and the foundation of every teacher professional development. The qualification is something that is set to have defined appropriate requirements and competences that should have a short and long-term plan for a qualified teaching workforce. So here we have policies, here we have standards, here we have competencies clearly defined for teachers that they need actually to be able to teach. So this is kind of more general. The second pillar is about pre-service teacher training. So what does it mean? It means, or some call it initial teacher training. So pre-service teacher training is actually provides high quality, relevant, accessible teacher preparation before entering the profession. And the last one, which I think is very important and could be a very interesting topic for us to discuss further, is continuing professional development. So it's about ongoing workforce support through in-service teacher training and on-site professional development. So I will move to the next slide to let you know that actually there is a level of progression when it comes at these around these three pillars. So we usually think about latent stage like a basic foundation, where you need to establish foundations, or you have foundations for teacher workforce. You have identified competence profiles, teacher needs, as well as data that is needed to start to work on this. The second stage, a progression, is in the context where we have already all this in place. We have competencies, we have standards defined, we have teacher profiles, we know what teachers need, and that now we are more into the stage of actually identifying inequalities in development of and deployment of teachers. We are in a situation to assess issues with access to pre-service and in-service and support opportunities for teachers. We have developed strategies to respond to unmet needs, and also not looking only at teachers, but also at school administrators, psychologists, inspectors, head teachers, and so on. And the last but not least is established stage. It's the situation and the context where everything what I have mentioned is in place, which might be the case in Kuwait, from what I see, that actually takes advantage on reflecting on the results of monitoring and evaluation of the workforce, and then based on that, refresh and ensure continuous improvement of teaching personnel. So I don't want to take your time to go again on in-depth discussion about qualifications, about the pre-service teacher training program. So I want a bit to focus on continuing professional development, because I think for this time, this is very relevant to the COVID situation and to the post-COVID situation. So I would really want you to consider key issues regarding continuing professional development. The first one is everyone should have opportunity for continuing professional development. So all teachers who are in the education system need to provide that opportunity, no matter COVID, non-COVID. Second, the second level is that we have to make sure that we have policies in place, we have clear outcomes defined, and we have basic strategy for implementation and monitoring, and a plan for institutional capacity building. And the last, the more advanced stage is where we have well-established systems for continuing professional development, where we also see that improvements need to take place. We need stronger policies, we need some professional development offerings, and updates based on evaluations and latest research. Another aspect which I think is also important is that once you establish basic policies and directives, which I think is the case in Kuwait, you also need to consider how this continued policy implementation policies is happening. First, you have to ensure that you have key partners on board, to ensure that there is increase of the supply, meaning provision of programs, but at the same time to be able to review the content and methods of the existing programs, monitor performance and improve their effectiveness, to assess the feasibility and develop a plan for on-site coaching for teachers, and to use multiple strategies to build capacity to implement quality continuous professional development. Now, the COVID, and even before COVID, we have seen systems that have really started to think and become more flexible. Why? Because they have thought and they were quite advanced. And I think the situation is in Kuwait, from what I heard from Mrs. Muna, is that remote teaching professional development is something that is usually planned in a normal, let's say, education systems. But the COVID has actually imposed us to think about it in a more strategic and more systematic manner. So for us, remote teaching, teacher professional development is about training programs that can be delivered either face-to-face or remotely or in a blended format. But we always want to highlight that the same principles of effective professional development need to be followed. What is something else interesting about remote teacher professional development? That existing professional development activities need either to be adapted to the situation, or they need to have developed new programs or activities for remote learning. And we always say that that can be done either online, can be done offline, can be done face-to-face, but also through the use of a light, so-called light technology. But then again, I really would like to remind you that technology should not be a priority. The focus should be on training that is relevant and appropriate to meet teachers' needs. And as I think somebody already mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, it's Mrs. Muna, who said that teachers are already provided opportunities for to participate in synchronous and asynchronous training activities. So what we suggest is usually to look at the blended approach, meaning to combine. And then what are some delivery options which I would suggest for your consideration? So what we want is to have more demonstrations, to have more master classes, to have observations, video interactions, and guided practice. We suggest to use distance learning technologies, but also to ensure that the mentoring by senior teachers is in place. On the other hand, something that needs to happen, no matter whether it's face-to-face, online, or remotely, is that we need to ensure that the reflective practices are in place. So we want teacher to reflect, to be able to consider what's working well and what's not working well. And then something which we have seen has happened in a number of countries and that has worked very well is to implement coaching initiatives. And that should really take place gradually, like using lessons learned from small initiatives so that they can also inform a bigger scale up. Some ways to do coaching are suggested. I mean, there are different ways to do it. Some are using group coaching, others are using peer coaching. Distant coaching is also an option, considering the situation, with video or with usage of other media. Another point to consider is to establish peer support networks for teachers. And that can happen within the same school, within the same location, or within the same cluster or geographical cluster. And the reason would be mainly to share good practices. And the last but not least is to facilitate the creation of professional associations for teachers, senior managers, and head teachers. My last point here is actually to not forget about one thing: motivation of teachers through remote learning. So how does motivation of teachers, and how do we ensure presence of teachers? We may have a teacher who shuts down the video. We may have a teacher who's with open video, but we may not have a present teacher. So we need a teacher who has to have a skillful instruction behind this program. We need to prompt teachers. We need to question them. We need to encourage them to participate, to be actively engaged. And it can happen also with making use of technology, using various means or media such as SMS, mobile apps, WhatsApp, video calls, and so on. And then another point is to ensure that teachers are continuously engaged and participate. That something that has worked very well in a number of countries is to create a repository of high quality and relevant resources, which would be accessible and available to teachers for their easy use, and also that the quality of teacher professional training programs should not be compromised, no matter whether we are using technology or other forms. So this would be my presentation, and I was supposed to present it for 15 minutes, but I overstepped 5 minutes. I think that this is okay. And then there are a number of things that I really have in mind that also could be interesting to discuss. But as I said, this presentation was mainly to steer the discussion and to ensure some communication happening. And I really would like to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Apertita, for your really inspirational presentation and on the online remote teacher professional training curriculum with the option of coaching. The concept of peer support networks is they're amazing, and they should be implemented. And similar to the previous session, I'd like to ask all panelists again. You know, we already dip into the series of discussion point, but again, general question. Of course, welcoming your comment first. First question is, what are some good practices of teacher professional development? Second is, how has COVID-19 affected teacher professional development in general? Number 3 is, what kind of opportunities have you created to advance the capacity of teaching workforce? But not limited to, but it's just guidance for our intervention and discussion. Floor is open. Dear panelists, who would you like to go first? Muna, is you unmuted?
Hi again. First thing about the practices of teacher professional development, as I told in my presentation, that in the beginning we did give them all the training for how to use the virtual classes and non-virtual classes. With the training by themselves, I hope that one day, if you want a meeting and I send or I do put for you a lesson as a model to see, especially let's say if there is a practical with the science lesson, if you want to see how they are acting, they are well done by themselves, because you know we have like the supervisors, and we have special for the in the schools, the IT teachers. They are following all the teachers all the semester. They are following them if they are using well the virtual classes, if they need anything. So these things does gain them a big experience how to use these virtual classes and how to deal with the e-learning. So anytime if you want a model for this lesson, we are ready for that. This is the first thing. Let's say this is even as if you want to say about the lessons they learned. COVID-19 using by compulsory this e-learning, a big lesson for all the teachers. Even if they found challenges, but they direct the second day, the followers for them, which are the supervisors, their head teachers inside the schools, they are following them, so they get rid and they make achievement for them through the training. This is even the lessons. If you want to know about the effect of COVID-19 in general for the development itself, or let's say for the practical development, I know there is effect. But again, we say with challenges, we do helping them through everything, through giving them the resources through the platform. We have big resources for each lesson, for each standard, for each curriculum. there is big resources inside that platform, so they can, if he is not so qualified in using this e-learning, he can use that lesson, because, you know, as I told you in my presentation, we had a big, let's say, we had that serials special for these lessons. For opportunities to make, let's say, for the future, we are looking for the future. Our students, we are dealing from the kindergarten until grade 12. Grade 12, the one who is going to deal with the future and with the university and to be, or with the practical, what he is going to use. These are, they have a special, let's say, follow up. They are special. Why? Because, you know, through our the assessments, even it is e-learning assessment, we are looking to give them the paper assessment. But until the health MOH, they give us the opportunity to do this, as special, as I told you, their health is very important for us. But we are looking so that we want to give the justicity for our learning or for our teaching, special for this, the one who are going to join the university or the high places there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your experience. And any other point from other panelists? Okay, I think I mean I think panel may need some time to think about the questions and then their intervention planning. While we are waiting, we have received some question in the chat box, and I would like to read for you just while we are waiting for the panelist intervention. But I mean, when I just use the Google Translate and also based on their chat. I think there's two issues. First of all is about the question from Majid. How do you see the difference between Arabic government education, I think the public education, what he meant, and Arabic private education in Kuwait? How do you see the difference? That's the first question. I think it's related to the private versus public. Question from Dr. Shekhar: why did remote education succeed in private school, but not in public schools? That's his question. And it is impossible to have it in the learner because the learner has no choice in that. That's a similar question, but conceptualizing into the area of private and versus public. And there is another dimension of question. Question from Abdul Mohsin. Do you think in the future we will minimize the school building and replace them with cloud schools? That's a question. And another question that linked to this is from Dr. Ahmed Al-Kandari. He particularly want to ask to Danny, but it's the same thing. The COVID-19 pandemic emphasized a lot of online training. It is true. As a parent, he or she has sensed some cultural issue on credibility of process, which I think it is very well addressed in the first round of discussion, the credibility issues. So this is the just a question to gear our continuous conversation and discussion. Floor is yours, colleagues.
You want me to go ahead?
Please. There we go.
Let's say for the first question, which is what's the difference between the private and the government schools? Private schools, are they succeeding, and the government schools are not succeeding? Of course, I don't agree with this, especially the last sentence, the government is not succeeding. We cannot say succeeding and not succeeding. One thing, if we want to say there is a signal for that, the private school, the first thing I want to tell you that what is the private school? Private school, it is non-governmental one. The parents is paying as a private for this because it's not following our curriculum, especially if it is non-Arabic. Let's say from United Kingdom, American schools, we have English schools, we have American schools, we have a lot Indian, everything. They are following special curriculums. They are paying, our parents, the parents are paying especially not less than 3,000. There is limit, of course, it depends on 3,000 KD until 7,000 KD for that. So he is paying but by himself. The government school, the government is responsible, and the government is paying for each student all over the 12 years, 7,000 KD every year. You should know this. And there is a big difference. Since the government is paying that, this means it is not easy for that. Let us say that is the money for the what we call it for the special, for the MOE. Let's go back to the private schools. They are opening from 8 a.m. until 2 till 3, because they are giving the whole subjects, and the student is staying and opening the camera the whole day. They are dealing with that e-learning as the what we call it the real learning. The real learning, they are dealing exactly the same. So my granddaughter and my grandson, they are in English school, and they are starting from 8 till 3 o'clock. Now my grandson, he is complaining from his back, and I'm treating him because why the government is taking only 2 hours to 3 hours to the student. I know that this is from the UNESCO, and we know that it is before, since we started that pandemic, we know that the student should not exceed the 2 hours facing the camera or facing the computer, which caused big things for his health, which maybe affected his health. So this is the two difference. Okay, is it succeed for that? It is succeed maybe for gaining the informations and teaching. But how about his general health? Even if they are giving PEs, music, everything, we are not saying it is not good. But let's go back to our government schools. I don't want to be as only to say that we are succeeding or no. We are doing our best that we do not stop learning. We said that it is the lowest learning or lowest teaching, but non-stop learning. We can say it is self-learning. It is also the virtual learning. We are doing our best to gain, to let our students gain informations and learn and not stop learning. This is, I find it a big success for our government school. Let's say if it is going back to reopening, we learn a new lesson and we gain a new lesson for that, for our future, because everything in the world, as I told you, it is a new thing for our society, our students, our teachers, our parents. So let's go, if we are going with the future, we are now fine. Anything happened, if it is not pandemic, maybe something, anything else happened, let's say disease, disaster. We are ready to face these disasters, inshallah, not happening. So that's the second question. About the third question, how to decrease the building of the schools, because there is an e-learning. It's not about decreasing. Since we have a school already built, why should we restructure it again, or should we we have schools in our country, and our government does not stop rebuilding schools. We have a big buildings. We have. Why should we avoid these buildings? It is fine, and everything is fine. Don't worry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for you responding to those questions. And I'm backup, not the backup, just sharing the follow-up response from Dr. Shekhar. I'm talking now, I read for you. I'm talking now as an instructor for student. Why do we not see the teacher's skill in distant education and his efficiency in using the tools available to him during the explanation and during the exercises and exams? Or a large number of teachers do not know the correct use of tools, unfortunately, and this causes great confusion for the learner and guide who follow the student. But so this is exactly why we need, and the Kuwait National Authority or Ministry yourself may consider more formatted and structured, organized teacher training platform, not just for teacher, but the relevant people who involved in this type of online or remote education, which has been proposed and which can be further advanced with the support or collaboration with UNICEF. Actually, what Al-khebra proposed. I think so. I think this is the type of very important discussion that we can, this is an issue. And well, Al-khebra, floor is yours. Given that, you first respond and.
No, I want to respond to the question, but to the previous one, if I may. There was one comment about school infrastructure, closing schools, moving to cloud, and I really would like to remind everybody one thing: the importance of student interaction and the presence of them being with their peers in school cannot replace any technology, cannot replace any e-learning, so we should always have that in mind. That's why we're saying that school reopening should be at the heart of the policies of every national government, including in Kuwait. And I know that the Kuwait government is working on that. And I know that there are policies for school reopening. And that's why to start and to consider blended learning, a combination of face-to-face with remote learning is always a good option. But don't forget, you will never be able to compensate for the loss of not having children exposed to their peers. This is a well-being part. This is a social emotional part, which is so important. Therefore, I'm a bit hesitant to say that we should all move to cloud, because at the end of the day, we should not be living in a virtual world. We should really be interacting as much as possible. That's why the special measures should be taken. That's why safety measures need to be taken. That's why vaccines are happening. So all of that for the benefit of ensuring human interaction. And I would really like all of you to consider that. My last point is about a suggestion for all these courses that have been put in place that we've heard from Mrs. Muna. These are absolute wonderful pieces of work. I mean, there's no doubt. But please, I want everyone to think also about one thing. Teacher professional development is a system in itself. So ad hoc teacher training programs are always good because they respond to the situation. But don't forget that we should have short-term and long-term plans. And when we talk about teacher professional development, we should always think about what are the needs of teachers. And we have to be visionary. We have to know what is going to happen in 10, 20, 30 years from now. So while learning lessons from what you have been doing with this e-learning and the courses that have been provided to teachers, we should always think as well how these e-learning courses are going to be embedded, how they are going to be accredited, who is going to be certified, who is going to be the provider to be issued license to support teacher, and so on. And that's why I'm saying, and I would go a bit back to some of the good examples that we have seen globally, is where the adequate teacher professional system was put in place, including technology, but not only. These systems have really worked well during COVID response. We've seen that happening in Estonia, we've seen that happening in Chile, we've seen that happening in Serbia. So I think that these are kind of things that we should all have in mind. And I also have some, maybe later in the last part of the discussion, where I could suggest some interesting tools to share with everyone for consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before, there is some interesting point, I think very legit point, the question in the chat box, but in Arabic, so I just use the Google Translate. As a department head, I found the problem is not primarily with the teachers, but rather with the evaluation mechanism through distant learning. This is not realistic and real for actual level of learners. That's just the rigid point that we, while we are talking and focusing on the teachers' professional development, which actually the initial intended focus, but at the same time, the evaluation CVT mechanism or other form of online or blended evaluation mechanism should be in place. This is just for your information to move forward. And if dear panelists, do you have any comment or intervention as a final today? If there's no comment, we already have discussed a bunch of issues that are very relevant during the COVID in the education system, and I'd like to invite finally the Alfredita for your remarks.
Yes, actually, I want to just summarize some key takeaways from my side from this discussion and the way I see that could be moved forward. So the first thing is actually, again, I'm going back to teacher professional development. So I think that there should, all teachers, that's the first recommendation, all teachers should be provided opportunities to continue with the pre-planned professional development. So what was part of the professional development, I think that should not stop. That's the basic thing. The second thing is to ensure that the programs that have been developed have the element of remote delivery, right? So that not everything is put in remote, but that we should consider a remote, blended, and face-to-face approaches for delivering of teacher professional training programs. And my last point is actually to think that how teachers could benefit from guidance. So teachers need guidance on professional development for remote pedagogies. Don't forget that remote pedagogies is completely different thing. It's not about how teacher has to use Teams, Google Classroom, WhatsApp, but it's about what is the essence and the key aspects of remote pedagogies that a teacher has to be familiar with. I will just share 3 things that we as UNICEF have developed in this region, which might be of interest also for our counterparts in Kuwait. For short-term response, we at regional office here in UNICEF, we have developed something called Teacher Preparedness Training Package. Teacher Preparedness Training Package is to guide teachers how to ensure safe school operations within their areas of responsibility, how to ensure that that the well-being of children, but also of themselves, is addressed, and how learning some basic tips about how to identify learning loss, how to support catch-up of students who have missed education during this period, and some suggestions on how actually to work on some, as Ms. Muna mentioned, some examples of lesson plans. So we have this package, and this package is already translated into Arabic, and we can share that with you. And some countries in our region have already adopted. Some have used them the way it is. Some have contextualized to their specific needs. And currently what we are doing is we are putting it into an online version, which we plan to make it accessible both online and offline. And this is for teachers to use. And it's a self-directed. So you don't need a trainer. You don't need someone to guide teachers how to do it, because it's quite self-explanatory. So that's something that could be interesting for maybe our Kuwait partners to look at. And then UNICEF in Jordan has really done quite a lot of work with the Ministry of Education. For instance, they have developed something called e-safety course. And somebody mentioned, I think during the previous session, about the safety, about the use of internet, about culturally appropriate ways of remote education and so on. So I think that's an interesting course that our colleagues in Jordan office have developed. And currently what they have done is they have actually developed a teacher course framework, which is about generic pedagogy. So it's not about specialized courses. It's about generic pedagogy based on the most recent research and theories, and guides teachers how to become effective both in face-to-face, remote, or blended learning. So, and this is an interesting piece of work, because what our colleagues in Jordan office are currently doing, they're working with the Ministry of Education to define the delivery modalities of this course. And the course is meant to take place 1 year, meaning it should be accredited. The Ministry of Education is looking into accreditation that will contribute to teacher professional development, that will have, phases, and it's modular. And it's very interesting because it also shows the teacher's progression in terms of where the teacher is in terms of achieving the goals of the course. This is also something, a very interesting piece of work that maybe Kuwait could be interested to look into. So these are some of the ideas for your thinking and consideration. And over from my side, thank you so much.
Faith. Siong, sorry to bother you, but Fatima wants to take the floor. If you can give us 2 minutes from Kafo.
Of course, but I didn't see the hands. Yeah, please.
Hello, hi, sorry. I've been listening to so many different ideas, and we see a wealth of activities like from different sectors, the private, the government, of course, and also NGOs and small activist groups. At CAFU, I just want to explain what CAFU is, and then I'll tell you a bit more about what we've been doing. So basically, we're a platform that helps people to search, connect, and collaborate with achievers in Kuwait. And we have 10 different communities. One of them is the like education community. And we've had several events over the past year, learning from different mistakes and different experiences, as well as hearing from different initiatives, youth initiatives, and non-profits, as well as some private schools that were involved in discussing various things. I think we have a wealth of ideas. It's now time about mapping those and seeing what we can learn together. So bringing those more together, and perhaps we're more than happy to collaborate with anyone who's interested. We're going to have a forum to put all these different entities and what they do, and perhaps consolidating some of these efforts and knowing how to apply and create some kind of a framework or to gather all these ideas and keep on adding them to improve the process. At the end of the day, no one knows everything about what's happening in the future, but what we can do is focus on what's happening now and what happened before and what lessons learned we can take forward together. It's a process. It's not one side or the other. It's not only the government. It's not only the parents. It's a whole system. So we have to make sure our ecosystem is flourishing. We're learning from these and mapping and even documenting all these efforts, because I see lots of beautiful effort that just needs proper alignment, proper usage of and applying what is learned. This is the only thing I wanted to say. And I appreciate all the efforts. I see them with lots of passion and lots of sincerity. Everyone's trying to do their best. So I think just optimizing that would be a way forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your the final intervention. That's very impressive. And thank you, Mr. also Ms. Aperdita, and all panelists to contribute your exceptional experience, knowledge sharing with us today. And now I think we are almost reaching to the end. And first of all, please allow me to repeat what I have just said at the beginning, the inspirational wisdom toward teaching and learning. It takes 10 years for a tree to grow, but it takes 100 years for talented people to be nurtured, which is essential in building fundamental backbone to be accumulated and improve in the form of human capital towards knowledge-based economy and learning society, if you wish. In this respect, we have discussed and well, tentatively agree among us for the next step moving forward that, yeah, UNESCO and ILO will have a continuous discussion with the Minister of Education, Dr. Sheikh Al-Jaf, and actually agreed to collaborate the development of Tibet, improved Tibet version of framework in coming weeks. That's the first action that we might consider. And second of all, I think, I mean, it's very interesting that Ms. Muna mentioned and called for the various support from international community and also NGO in the area of things that diversifying initiative into online, blended learning, and technical expertise sharing is welcome. And also Minister of Education may need to build some capacity building for training for teacher program, which I think strongly that our dear list, the Aferdita can provide and support with, again, as I recall, if correct me if I'm wrong, the beauty of remote teacher professional training curriculum that already developed. And I'm not saying that my emphasis is not about the online, remote, or training, but the content and substance that UNICEF has already accumulated, with the option of coaching and peer support group. And I see that the Fatima already, I mean, we can collaborate because Fatima already developed the various professional networks, networking system that we can borrow or collaborate with the particular focus on teacher network and peer support network group, taking into account, as Ferdita mentioned, long-term and short, as well as a short-term perspective. And it will be very interesting if, as a first step from UNICEF, that I think, well, teacher preparation training package that you already developed, and the genetic pedagogy for blended learning curriculum. I mean, those are two areas I think we can start discussing with the government, Ministry of Education, particularly with the national counterpart. I think, well, these proposed action are very critical area of collaboration between Kuwait National Authority and our UN agencies in coming weeks and months to come, because we are also waiting for the final signature of our cooperation framework. Is a comprehensive framework, and it contains all the dimension of intervention and engagement and cooperation, comprehensive framework between government and United Nations as a whole. So I think we need to start discussing with, as I propose, 3 points. And finally, just final comment, I'd like to let you know that this is the first first human capital knowledge-based knowledge economy policy consultation series, which we talk about redirecting education and training in Kuwait. But please bear in mind that we are planning to convene the second policy consultation series, where we can explore innovative public-private partnership for schooling system in Kuwait, by discussing way of designing, way of implementing it, while identifying challenges associated with the current institutional and regulatory framework in Kuwait. So I think that's what we are planning for having it in coming months. So that will be another interesting discussion. And last but not least, I'm pleased to invite Dr. طارق for his final remarks. Not sure whether he's still here. All right. If not, then, well, thank you all, our dear panelists, Mr. Danilo, Kishore, Perdita, and Muna, and and all the distinguished panelists, and look forward to engaging and continuous collaboration moving forward. And thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.